All right. Hey, everybody. Good evening, Protectors. Welcome to the Education of Weaponized Man podcast. I'm Greg LeBoeuf. You got Dustin Doderoy, Brad Vanderlight with us. We're back again here live every Thursday. Glad you could join us whenever you happen to be listening, whether you're catching live or listening, downloading off your. But tonight, we are going to talk about, or I labeled this one, Don't Die in a Gi. And I think there's actually kind of a bit of a thing going on in the self-defense community. It's a bit of a virus type thing, as an analogy, right? But and if you're not aware of it, it has a lot of negative impact, the potential to have a lot of negative impact. And I just think it's really worth breaking this down and kind of diving deep on it tonight. So before I even cut to the intro, I'm just going to ask a couple quick questions because this will be a great setup before we get into this. But you know, if you want to learn jiu-jitsu, right, whether it's Brazilian jiu-jitsu, whatever, you want to learn jiu-jitsu, why? You want to learn how to, learn boxing or kickboxing or Thai boxing. Why? You want to learn self-defense. Why? You want to learn a martial art. Why? You want to learn a traditional art. Why? However I could phrase the question, and we could, spend a lot of time rephrasing that question, but I always got to ask why. And that's your answer to that question. Your why is where I came to this, this virus or this whole concept of like, listen, don't die in a fucking gi. Okay, so if you want to figure out what we're talking about, stick with us. Back in 30 seconds, and we're going to go deep. So hang with us. Hey, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Greg LeBoeuf, and I'm sharing insights for how I went from the victim of a brutal attempted murder to weaponizing my mind and body, mastering the tool of violence so that I can protect myself and my family from violent criminal assault, and how for the past 30 years, I've been helping good people just like you do the same. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. Okay, so I had a setup. I started asking some questions. I titled this episode, Don't Die in a Gi. And I started asking some questions. And, it doesn't matter the order of the question really, but why do you want to learn jiu-jitsu, right? Why do you want to learn boxing? Why do you want to learn Thai boxing? Okay, for most people, and we know this just statistically, most people that walk into the door of a MMA center, a martial arts center, a kickboxing center, a boxing center, whatever it is, most people go in there, their first thing, like overwhelmingly, like over 90% of the people go in because they want to learn self-defense. Okay, so we just know statistically that is the number one reason somebody starts something. So however we phrase the question, for the majority of people, why do you want to learn X or why do you want to do X? I want to learn how to defend myself. Okay, so right there, then we have to look at this concept I want to talk about tonight, and I would say it this way: you have to understand that it is the sum, it is the parts, not the whole. Okay, and so the concept I want to lay on you tonight is something that's called synthesis. Okay, and so a synthesis is often achieved by taking oftentimes very diverse parts or pieces and combining them to make a new whole. Okay, and that right there is exactly what has to occur when you're talking about self-defense. That is exactly what we do when we talk about weaponizing. Okay, it's a process. It's a synthesis. It's taking parts of something and creating a whole new. And so I'm going to say this because this is the way that I kind of wrote it down in my notes, and I just think this is really powerful in and of itself. But the specific nature or characteristics of a problem creates the need for synthesis. Okay, so I'm gonna rephrase that, and maybe we'll just break this down. This will be the first thing we break down, let you guys jump in on it. But the specific nature or characteristics of a problem is what actually creates the demand or the necessity for synthesis to occur. Okay, so I mean, again, I don't ever discuss with you guys what we're going to talk about. So this is, the title didn't give you anything off it, I'm sure. So just what are your visceral thoughts on what I'm talking about so far, or specifically my last statement?
Yeah, like really quick. What I heard was context determines content, which is what we say all the time, over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's no different than what you just said.
Okay. Okay, Brad.
Yeah, for me, just digesting it is, again, it's the nature of the problem, you said, right? The goal of the problem.
The characteristics, the specific nature or characteristics of the problem, yep.
yeah, so determines what the course of action that you need to take to solve that problem. Um, is kind of how I'm kind of thinking about it. So it's like when we get back to it, like I agree, absolutely everything does like both context equals the content, and it's like if you, and again, how well do you own the problem? This is another thing that we've talked about. If you own the problem, then why are you seeking a solution that doesn't line up with the problem that you're trying to solve?
Okay. Obviously, I get where you guys are coming from, and I agree with it. But I think there's an integral part that I really want to zero in on that's going to lend itself to tonight's conversation. And you touched on it, but I just want to make sure we're all drilling down on the exact same thing. So the specific nature or characteristics of a problem creates the need for synthesis to occur. That's the part that I want to talk about. So when we talk about things like context determines content, that's 100% true, and it's completely related to this. The context of a situation determines the content that you need to solve that situation. But here's the thing. That's after. That's like in the middle of a situation. Is this lethal force? Is this asocial violence? Or is this antisocial aggression? What's the context of the situation? Right? Am I trying to, do I have to, take life to preserve life? That would be, what's the context of this? Right? What I'm talking about is a stage before that. And that is, if the context determines the content, which is 100% true, you already have to have the ability to read the context, and then you have to already have the skill sets, the knowledge, the training, the strategies, the tactics, the tools to then apply the right content. So how did that happen? And so I titled this "Don't Die in a Gi." And the reason I titled it "Don't Die in a Gi" is it's got nothing to do with the gi really, but it's an analogy, or it's symbolism. If you take, let's say, like for example, why do you want to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And someone says, well, I want to learn how to defend myself. And then maybe they're like, well, I just believe that Jiu-Jitsu, from everything that I've heard, is one of the best self-defense systems on the planet. Okay, that's great, right? But here's the thing. The specific nature or characteristics of a problem creates the need for synthesis. So right here, what we need to do is say, is Jiu-Jitsu the sole answer to every single conceivable threat that you may face and thereby need to defend yourself against? So is it literally one system, one art, one style, and it has all the answers for every conceivable situation? Now, I'm obviously talking to people that are listening to this. Don't automatically start going, well, no, but most. Like, no, I'm not talking most. I'm talking, is it the answer for every single conceivable threat-based situation that you might have to apply self-defense to protect yourself, your family, whatever? We all know the answer is no, right? It's no, because it's like, just watch even 10 hours of CCTV footage, watch violent rapes, assaults, and murders, and you'll see a large percentage of those situations, jiu-jitsu would not have helped them. Right? Now, I'm not saying that jiu-jitsu couldn't have been a tool or couldn't have been a part of a solution in those situations, but in and of itself, it's not the total solution. It's just not the way the world works. Right? Just the second there's more than one attacker, jiu-jitsu is limited, and people understand that. And then right away they go into the counter argument of like, yeah, but no art works against multiple opponents. Yeah, you're right, no art does, but there are strategies that do. Otherwise, how the fuck does a small 4-man team take out 30 terrorists with a room full of hostages? They use strategy. Like, there's different strategies, there's different techniques, there's different tools. Like it lies outside of a style or a system. I don't want to go too far off in that, but so the idea of don't die in a gi is what happens when you buy into the dogma. Right? And every art has dogma. And what's dogma? It's a set of principles or rules that have been laid down by some authority figure, and they are believed to be beyond reproach. It's like, this is the sole truth. And if you buy into that on any level, then you increase the risk of dying in that gi, of dying in that system, of dying in that style, because you're limiting yourself. So so now we got to circle back. the specific nature or characteristics of a problem that is what creates the need for synthesis to occur. So let's look at violence. What are just a few of the immutable characteristics or nature of violent assaults? Throw a few of those out there for us.
You can typically assume that you're smaller, weaker, outnumbered. Because
let's just take that for a second. Outgunned, outmanned, smaller, weaker, right? Okay, so again, if we just sit with that for half a second, is that true all the time? No, not all the time. Is it true some of the time? Sure. Let's not even talk about majority or minority. Is it, because I don't even want to say the word possible, right? Because anything's possible, but only certain things are probable. Is it probable that individuals that decide to attack you and your family do it in greater numbers, or they do it because they specifically target somebody because that person is smaller than they are, and which is a perceived weakness. That doesn't always hold true, but they look and go, hey, look I'm bigger than that person, I'm stronger than that person, therefore potentially that gives me an advantage. Or they bring weapons to help offset that the numbers. So is that probable? And I think, of course, the answer to that has to be, okay, yes. So those are just some of the nature characteristics. I know, Brad, if you want to throw a couple more downrange or something.
Yeah, it's one that immediately popped in my head is that it's not random. There's indicators that you could identify violence with. Okay,
so if we're talking about that, then what I would say for what is the specific nature or characteristics, then I would say that they target, right? There's criminal optics, meaning that, again, it kind of ties to what we said about their perceptions of an individual or a situation. They're educated. They are looking for somebody that fits a specific criteria. So even in a quote unquote random assault, they often have done victim selection. So it's not, very seldom is a random assault random to the attacker. That's just a word that most, let's quote, civilian people from the outside with no understanding put on it because they say, oh, the two subjects were like the subject and the victim were unknown to each other, thereby random. Yes, they were strangers to each other, but it doesn't mean that the predator, he still potentially and most likely picked out of a group of people his intended victim. So it wasn't random to him. Just like I don't understand his motivation. Well, the attacker often always understands their motivation. So it's only a mystery to one person out of that equation. But we label it with words like, random and, all that type of stuff. So 100%. So that is another, characteristic, or that is part of the nature of violent assaults. So if we're looking at this and saying, okay, the specific nature or characteristics of a problem, well, violence is a problem, right? It's violent crime occurs every single day, so it's a problem. Now, if you're looking at this, we could go deeper to really prove the point, but I think most people can draw the conclusions that there are many unknown factors. So I want you to think of it like playing a slot machine. On some slot machines, I'm not a big gambler, so I don't know, but I mean, on some slot machines, there's probably at least, I've seen, I think, 5, 6, or 8 individual wheels. You pull the big handle, they all spin around, and then all of a sudden one comes up, a gold bar, and then one comes up something else, and something, and you're trying to match these up. But violence is like you pull the roulette wheel, and it's like, how many of them are there? What time of day is it? Are you with your family or are you alone? Is there weapons involved? Are you injured? Are you fully healthy? Are you whatever it is? There's all these variables that pop up. And so the nature or characteristics of violence is, for a lot of people, it feels harder to predict. Okay, and so, what I'm getting at then is, well, then what art works? Like what style? Like, so do we do jujitsu and say, well, jujitsu is one of the most effective fighting arts, like fighting martial arts on the planet? And people can say, well, yes, that's true. But then we look at it and say, well, where are its limitations? Because everything has limitations. And so where are the limitations? And when you start identifying, well, it clearly isn't as effective against multiple opponents. It's clearly not effective against multiple opponents and weapons. There's a lot of environmental factors that could make it less effective. So whatever. You go through your little list of that. So then you start going, okay, well, now this as a whole isn't the sole solution. Okay, but often in that style or in that system, they teach only within the constraints of that system. So same as if you go to boxing or kickboxing or any other martial art in the world, any of the fighting system, you're going to look at it and go, okay, there's restraints within that. A lot of people would say, well, no, look at MMA now. MMA's become its own kind of art or its own style or its own system or whatever term you like to use with it, because they do, punching, kicking, clinching, and they do ground. So you say, well, that would be then, that's the totality of it. That's the whole of it. Yet they don't do weapons, they don't do mass attack, they don't do pre-incident indicators, there's so many different things that, again, okay, well, they don't do this. So that in and of itself is not the answer. So now it just keeps bringing us back to, like, it's created a need. And this is what I want to identify, because don't die in the gi. To avoid that pitfall, you have to first, control follows awareness. You have to become aware of the need for synthesis. Okay, and again, I'll just say it again. Synthesis is the combining of often very different or diverse parts to create a new whole. Okay, now, if there's anything you guys want to add into this or jump into this opinion, whatever, let's feel free to do that right now, and then I want to break something else down.
No, for me, this is a very good point that I get where we're going, and I'm very interested in how we're going to talk about it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so here's where I think we're going to get some meat on this. If people are following me when I say that you need synthesis, we need to be able to take diverse parts, often diverse parts, they don't have, but different parts, and create a new whole. Right away, what people's solution is they become eclectic. And that's a problem. So what does it mean to be eclectic? Eclectic is basically to almost at random pick different pieces. So eclectic in the martial arts world is to say, well, I do jujitsu, and I do boxing and kickboxing, and I do Kali, so I do some weapons training in the Filipino Kali. I do this art, I do that art, I do this art, I do some Wing Chun, I do this, I do that, I do some Olympic wrestling. I'm doing 7 different arts. Great, but you guys know from experience, what's the problem with being eclectic? What are some of the pitfalls of this?
I think one of the major ones is
you have no idea how to actually use it. Sorry, go ahead.
He kind of come out of nowhere on that one.
You're good. I think you're on a delay. You go.
Yeah.
I was just saying that when you're eclectic with different arts, I'm frozen.
It's a bit laggy, but we can hear you.
Am I good or am I frozen?
No, go ahead. Your video's a bit laggy, but I can hear you.
Yeah, when you're eclectic. Okay, when you're eclectic with the different martial arts, the problem is nobody's teaching you how to string them together, how to intertwine and actually use them as one. Do you know what I mean? Like you can't just be a boxer and then drop into ground fighting, then combine the two if no one's ever taught you how to actually apply them together and how one of them complements the other. Do you know? Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it totally makes sense. 100%. Perfect. Yeah, Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing because it really made me think about what you're saying, Dustin. And it's the other thing is nobody's teaching you how to do that, but also those individual pieces are not designed to work together, right? in terms of how that they were actually laid out and how they're orchestrated as a system. It's like, because if they were actually designed to, okay, a boxer and like jujitsu, if they were designed to do together, they would have been done together. So if someone goes out and they learn this and they learn that and the next thing, it's like you're learning things that they can go together, but by design, they're actually weren't designed to go together. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And I don't know
100%.
if you want to maybe re-articulate that, but yeah, it's there's that disconnect. You need someone that has the ability to tie those things together, and not many people do, because that's not an easy thing.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Now, each thing that you guys said is something that we've said and we've taught, and we've used those analogies and we've used those as that's how we describe it typically, right? So I actually want to try to reframe this and actually go a degree deeper on it, or left or right of it, depending on how you want to look at this, right? The whole idea of being eclectic, really, somebody could turn around and we say, listen, it's great, you train all these different arts, but who's teaching you how to put them all together? So if you go do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, then you do boxing and kickboxing, you do Kali and stuff like that. These pieces, like they're individual arts. So who's teaching you how to connect these things to flow together? Now, arguably, someone could sit there and say, well, this is, for the most part, this is what MMA has accomplished. MMA is teaching us as a system how you go from like your striking, so punches and kicks, into your clinching and into the groundwork. So there is becoming this, there's a form of synthesis that is happening that is what created mixed martial arts. And I would 1,000% agree with that. But where I want to change the viewpoint on this is that if you take a part, like a piece, just whatever piece of the puzzle, we take this piece, and this piece is designed for one-on-one fighting, or designed for sport, or designed for competition. It has an intended use. And so you take that piece, then you take another piece that is from a different sport. So if you take Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then you take some boxing or kickboxing or Thai boxing, and then you say, okay, well now you go to an MMA gym and they say, well, let us show you how to put these things together. I don't think anyone would discount what I'm about to say. Boxing in MMA is not as pure as boxing in a boxing gym. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the way it's being executed in MMA is not the way it's being executed in a pure BJJ tournament, or even at a pure BJJ school. And so I think most people that are in traditional arts or in, combative sports or competitive sport recognize that, like, it's got to be modified a little bit, right? Because, when you're boxing, you don't have to worry about a double leg takedown. Right? When you're in a jiu-jitsu tournament, you don't have to worry about the strikes. You don't have to worry about the ground and pound. Okay? So the MMA thing, if you're like, I specialize in MMA, your boxing or your striking, I'll just say, your striking and your jiu-jitsu are both going to be, they're going to be a little bit, a synthesis is going to occur, and they're going to be a little bit different. And that's a great thing. That's what I'm talking about. That becomes very, very powerful. Now you take somebody who's specialized in that, you take them out and you put them into a pure boxing ring. And again, they probably go to a boxing gym so they can box. But if they tried to compete and really achieve, a high level of just boxing, they're going to have to change. They're going to have to just go, okay, I need to be just singularly focused. So here's where I think this conversation can become different. When I say don't die in the gi, I'm not saying that, that a synthesis is not occurring in the martial arts world. But now you go to violence. Our specific problem, remember, majority of people walk into a dojo, a martial art training center, whatever, a gym, because they want to learn how to defend themselves. So one of the questions was this: defend yourself against what? And that matters. What do you want to defend yourself against? Like, if I was going to ask you guys, like, what do you want to defend yourself against? Well, first, is that accurate? Like, why do you train? Do you train to learn to defend yourself and your family? And if so, then, like, what are you specifically wanting to defend yourself against?
it's violent criminal assault. It's so I don't want to get murdered. I'm not so worried about getting beat up anymore. I'm not in those environments where you know you're battling egos. It's somebody who's trying to take my life or take the life of my loved ones.
Okay, perfect. And Dustin, I'm going to assume that you're on board with that as well. I think your camera is frozen now, but so now all of a sudden, again, we talked about some of the characteristics or the nature of a violent assault, and so now you have to look and say, okay, well then, like when you ask someone, do you want to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And most people would say, like, yeah, like I've seen so much about it and stuff. I heard it's really, really good and really, really effective. And it's like, yes, that's great, all true. But it's like, now you have to learn to say, well, do you really want to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Or do you want to learn just the aspects of that training methodology and that art that are useful in the context of solving your problem? And most people will go, yeah, no, that's what I want to learn. Like clearly jiu-jitsu is one of the ingredients that you cannot be without when it comes to wanting to defend yourself. Now, in a fight, yes, but also in a violent assault, yes. But what you would use to defend yourself in the fight and how you would do it in a violent assault are different. Just like in MMA, the striking is different than the purity of the boxing or the kickboxing or whatever it happens to be. So we're just getting Dustin back on here. So I hope that makes sense to people. Hope people can follow that. It's different. But what I believe, what a lot of people want to learn is they say, well, no, like I want to learn to defend myself against like fucking like a serious violent, I don't want to get murdered. I don't want my wife raped in front of me. And so you want to learn jiu-jitsu, but no, what you really want to learn is the element of jiu-jitsu, the strategies, tactics, tools, the mindset that solves that specific problem. And that is different than the sport fight. Now, someone could say, well, don't I learn both? If I take jiu-jitsu, don't I learn all of it? Maybe over enough time, maybe they show you all of it. They show you the real combative stuff that'll work in violence. And then they also show you the stuff that's more for like a mid-level, altercation. They show you stuff that works well if you need to play the role of a security guard and just detain somebody or stop them from hurting themselves or other people or you. Like they're showing you this whole myriad of it, but it gets lost. It's not separated. Like, and you know what I mean? Because you're swimming in this ocean of water where it's not specific. And so when it comes time to do it, people can get confused. They can't tell the difference between, what is the real street combative stuff and what is the sports stuff. It happens all the time. And of course that goes for the jiu-jitsu, that goes for the striking, that goes for everything. So what I'm saying is that you had striking arts, you had grappling arts, you had, clinching arts, you had all these different arts. And then a synthesis occurred. The UFC created this environment where this synthesis happened that led to the creation and the evolution of mixed martial arts. And you can't deny it. From 1993 till today, look at the caliber of athlete. It's the athletes that were doing this in the first 5 years pale in comparison to the athletes that are taking and getting into the octagon today. Because that synthesis has continued to progress. Where I want people to really understand and get clarity is the synthesis for weaponizing against violence has also been occurring, but it is not public domain. And it's not because it's some secret. It's not because it's some black art or dark art or all that fucking bullshit. It's not that at all. It's because it's never going to be popular. You can't turn it into a sport. There is no way to produce it for mass public consumption of entertainment and be profitable. Right? There are those out there that would love to watch two 3-on-1s and fighting to the death and, gang warfare, guerrilla warfare and murders. And there's lots of people that would love that as entertainment. The majority of people are never going to want to see that as entertainment. Right? So what the don't die in a gi for me is you got to recognize that, like, that's why it's like, if people talk, like, for example, the striking arts. The striking arts for violence are so far removed from the world of boxing, yet some of their roots are connected to boxing, if that makes any sense. Right? Like striking is striking. Boxing is one of the most effective striking arts. But in a violent situation, you don't want pure boxing. You don't even want really kind of half and half of, like, you don't want it, you don't even want halfway. It's a different, you want the roots of it, of how you generate power and, you know, body making this, but not the same end run, if that makes any sense at all. And that's synthesis. And a lot of people, you know, it's like, again, you know, I'll come back to this, then I'll get you guys to throw your 2 cents on it. But most people, you know, there's that one conversation, and you know, this woman said, you know, oh, I've always wanted to learn self-defense. And, you know, the response was, no, you haven't. Because if you always want to learn self-defense, you would have been taking self-defense. What you've always wanted to know is what you need to know so that you never find yourself in a situation where you have to defend yourself. That's what you really want to know. And after a quick second, it's like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to know. And so most people are like, I want to learn jiu-jitsu. Not really. There's, again, majority of people, no, they don't. They don't really want to learn jiu-jitsu. They want to learn what they need to know so that if they ever found themselves on the ground in a violent situation with somebody trying to rape, assault, or violently murder them, they would know how to survive that. That's all they really want to know. Same with the striking. Do you really want to learn boxing? No, you don't really want to learn boxing, because otherwise you would have been boxing for the last 10 years. Or you'd start boxing today and be boxing for the next 10, 15, 20 years of your life. You don't really want to know boxing. What you want to know is, what do I need to do? Or how do I use my hands? How do I knock someone's head off if it ever comes to that thing where that's what I need to do? That's what you really want to know. And so it's another way to look at weaponizing and be like, well, what is weaponizing? Well, weaponizing is the synthesis of this. It's the solution to a very, very, very specific problem. And that problem is criminal violence. What do I do if someone's trying to murder me, myself, my family, or other innocent people? And I can't avoid that. What do I do? So the strategy, tactics, and tools are a synthesis that has occurred. Because there is no art, there is no style that has the one answer. But you can't just go eclectic. You can't just say, I train knife with Kali stuff, I train some sticks, some percussion instruments, I train jiu-jitsu, I train this, I train this, I train this. And it's not just because somebody hasn't taught you how to put it all together, because you could arguably say, well, I go to MMA. Even though MMA doesn't use weapons and stuff, you know, you say, well, I have a pretty fair case or strong case that they taught me how to connect all these other arts, kicking, punching, trapping, ground fighting. But no, you haven't. Because the synthesis that is occurring there, the goal, the specific nature or characteristics of the goal, is for one-on-one fighting. It's for sport fighting. It's for gladiator type fighting, which is competitive type fighting. Two men agree to challenge each other and compare skills and test skills and fight each other. Now that works great in altercations. If you got some drunk and he's talking shit and you're talking shit back, or he offends you to a point where you're like, I must defend my honor or something like that, and you agree to fight him, or, you know, you're trying to walk to your car and, you know, he's in your face and you have no choice but to fight him, then, you know, then those arts can work, because a fight on the street or a fight in the cage is very, very similar. Violent criminal assault on the street is very fucking different than a street fight. That's what, you can't confuse that language. Okay, and so this is where I believe that we have to understand the synthesis, because that's what weaponizing is. Because people will come out and watch us and say, well, that looks like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Well, yes, but it's a synthesized version of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But yes, it's like, give credit where credit's due, 100%. Gracie Jiu-Jitsu has some of the best combative stuff that we can take and then synthesize it and put it into a greater framework that has been developed by some of the top combat minds and educators in the world. And then you do the same with the striking, the knives, the sticks, all that type of stuff. Okay, so I don't know if that makes sense or if that helps clarify kind of where I was coming from today, or what you guys, your feelings. Dustin's having some trouble tonight, but Brad, is there anything that resonates with you on that?
Yeah, you know what? Like, it reminds me of a story, and I'll try my best to remember it. You'll know exactly where I'm going with it once I get started, but I think a lot of the problem is culture, right?
Yeah.
Because people do not like to do that. And people don't like when someone like you or I are like, hey, yeah, I want to, there's some things that we could synthesize from this. Let's do that. No, you can't do that. You're just a training whore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the culture is backwards because they don't understand what the problem with the person's ultimate objective is, right? Because then it's like, well, when we could come in and we say, oh, that's really good. Look at what the Gracies are doing on their ground. Let's take that. Let's steal it. Let's strip it down to what actually works in the confines of what we're looking to operate within, and let's throw the rest out in the trash. Mm-hmm. That's hard for people to really be comfortable with somebody else coming and doing, right? Because it's, for one, it's culture, for one, it's loyalty, for one another, it's just like, well, I don't want to give away that, and you're just going to come and strip it and take what you want. Yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. So I don't know. That's what it just kind of reminded me of that story. If I'm missing some pieces from that, please help me fill it in. But I think a lot of that is, why doesn't it happen more? People don't like it.
Yeah.
You know, they don't like
it. Yeah, it goes against a certain nature, right? For all the reasons that you said, and that's why we've referenced a couple times this, that becomes dogma. You know, style or tradition, or even just an organization, a company. A guy opens up a mixed martial arts studio. A guy opens up a Taekwondo studio. A guy opens up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And, you know, the guy's trying to make a living. At the same time, he also has his own personal bias or what he's been trained in, and it works for him, and he's had success with it, and it's given him lots of things in his life. And then there's a sense of like, well, let's pay it forward. In most martial arts studios and stuff, there's a picture of a grandmaster or a picture of a sensei or somebody that you go, hey, look, you know, this guy gave us this. This has been handed down from him. And I think it's great, except for the dogma that comes with it. But I had this put to me. I remember Paul saying it a long time ago, but it's like, you know, if you know, this is my mentor, my instructor talking to me, but he said, if I do my job right, like, you're autonomous. You don't need me. You'll grow beyond me. And you have, and it's written on every, you know, everything he's ever given me, any type of documentation he's ever given me, it's comes with the sole ability to change anything, any part of this that suits my needs or the needs of my students or my clients. And so it's very rare and very different. But he said that at the end of the day, you will become autonomous. You won't need me anymore. We will continue to be friends and hang out and have a relationship, a training relationship and all that stuff out of respect, not out of blind loyalty. And that was like right from the beginning was like, you know, shooting down dogma, because what he did was the problem he was, you know, solving for people was violence. You know, this is why he was training the Navy SEALs and stuff. Like, you imagine operating at that level, going in and teaching elite units like that all over the world, and trying to teach them in a contained system or style, like trying to feed them dogma. Like, how dangerous could that be? Simply because you couldn't admit that, listen, like, I can teach you what I know and the pieces that I have. But of course, there's holes in what I'm doing. There is no one complete answer, which is why for us, the synthesis process isn't something that occurred and is now completed. It is ongoing always. It's all like, synthesis should be thought, it's a verb. It's constantly in action. It is happening. And I can just think back over the last 6 months, and we've changed things. The process has had to occur because we have discovered limitations or better ways to do things or better strategies, and a lot of it isn't like these massive changes, but it's this constant refining of this process. So, and yet tomorrow, for all I know, or in a month from now, or in a year from now, entire pillars of the weaponizing system, core components of it, could become obsolete. And that's okay. We will adapt and change and grow with that. So having this ability, we won't die in our gis. And at the same time, we stand on the shoulders of so many amazing, great people that have, like Elio Gracie, the Gracies, just created these amazing systems, but I don't need it all. I don't need to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I don't need, I am not the steward of jiu-jitsu. I'm not one of the guys, out there. It's not up to me to carry forward. There's so many people that are jiu-jitsu will be alive and around for many, many, many generations to come. And that's a great thing. But we need what we need to solve our specific problem, that synthesis. And I really do, because I talk to so many different people that are looking to get into training and looking for something, but often they go, I don't really know what I want. I don't know what to do. I don't know what's best or not best at this. And to me, it's stop thinking in those terms and really come back to let's clearly define a problem and then see yourself solving that problem. And for some people, they see themselves in a room full of people having their arm raised, being victorious. They see themselves getting, a trophy or, a medal, or just achieving that black belt status that very few people ever achieve. And that's great. So they see themselves being a steward of an art. And that's amazing. So then we know where to put them. We can help them find the place for them, find their people, their tribe. But for a lot of them, I say, or the other scenario is, do you see yourself in your house, maybe in the middle of the night or in the afternoon, and 2 or 3 guys, your door flies open. And there's your kids, they're playing 3 feet away from these guys with their toys. And your wife's in the kitchen or sitting on the couch with you as you guys relax and watch a movie after a hard day work. And all of a sudden you find yourself in a home invasion. And do you see yourself being able to, grab something off the coffee table, or being able to understand the strategies, tactics, and tools for how you use the environment within your home and how you terminate, and all these different things that are much more closely associated with the weaponizing and solving criminal violence. And people go, yeah, that's the skill I want. So you don't want all of jiu-jitsu. You don't want all of the boxing and kickboxing. I said, no, I don't care about being the black belt or being known as the kicker or the puncher or whatever it is. That's where you start going, okay, so now you're it's a blessing when you find a process, the synthesis that solves the problem that you're looking for specifically. And so, again, that's kind of where I thought tonight's conversation would be really beneficial. And we're going to throw this up here because Dustin's chiming in, but through messaging. So weaponizing whatever it needs to be. There can be no loyalty to a technique, tactic, or even strategy. If someone shows you a better way, you have to be willing to abandon what you know. And that's 100% true, and move on with what you've been exposed to, 100%. So Dustin gets it. He's on board. Unfortunately, he can't voice it personally, but that's okay. I don't know. So, is there anything, do you feel like I missed, Brad, or anything you'd want to add to this conversation tonight?
You know what? Nothing. I don't think you missed anything. I'm just going to share something that I've shared many, many times on the podcast. Something that makes me very proud to be a part of what we're doing. And that is the fact that we have that mission-specific mindset of what are we facing? What is the best thing that we could do strategically to handle what is in front of us? And exactly what Dustin said is if there's a better way to do or to handle the problem that we're facing in society today, we'll be the first to abandon shit, adopt a new way that works. And that's something that I've always been proud about. That's something, again, that's getting rid of the dogma that you mentioned earlier. Yeah. We don't care about that. We care about people not being fucking murdered in their homes, in their society, in their cars, in front of their kids. That's what we care about. So if there's a better way to do it, sign us up 100%. we'll come take lessons, because that's how passionate we are about solving the problem and being able to survive the problem. So for me, that's just how I want to wrap it up. Is just there's you know I I think that it's very hard for people to shed um, old way of doing something because of loyalty. You know,
Yeah.
so for me, it's a very powerful thing. I've identified with that and leaned into that so many times in my journey.
I love it, and I'm going to leave that. It was well articulated. I would have echoed that, but I'm going to leave you with that, and then I'm going to say one thing. I want to give an example of this, and this is not my personal example, although I benefited from this. But this synthesis process, one of the greatest things that my mentors gave me was they shared this process of how to synthesize. They gave me the framework, and that framework is ever changing, but they taught me how to continuously grow with that framework. And so I'll say this. In 1993, when the UFC started, right? Like, and if people can think back to that, I mean, most people had no clue. No one knew what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was outside of Brazil. Everybody looked at this little skinny, scrawny kid standing in a gi and thought this guy's going to get murdered. And of course, we all know what happened. He showed the world the power of ground fighting and Jiu-Jitsu, specifically the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu system and stuff. My instructors, right, who were teaching Navy SEALs, like, were among some of the top combat educators in the world, right? Working with some of the most elite units in the world. And they have their background, their systems, their style that got them into those organizations as the pinnacle of, like, practical combat effectiveness. And yet 5 years before the UFC ever came out, they were training Gracie Jiu-Jitsu with Rickson and Royce and Rorion. They were training with all of them, not just doing it once in a while. They were in their garages training with them privately 2, 3, 4 times, as much as they possibly could. Why? Like, they weren't following the rest of the world. It's not because they learned about it, because they, like, nowadays you just turn on TSN or UFC Fight Pass and, like, it's everywhere. No, because what we're saying is a core belief of theirs in this synthesis process. Now, this is a time when Rickson had no students. When they would try to leave, they'd do an hour private, and they would be there for 2 or 3 hours, and then they'd go to leave, and he would grab them and pull them back in and make them stay for another 2 or 3 fucking hours because he had no one to train. He wanted he wanted bodies. And here's the best part. Rickson would help Paul synthesize and say, no, for this I would do this. No, for this I would do this. For what you guys do, I'd do this. For, like, a SEAL getting this, no, Navy SEAL wouldn't do this. He wouldn't need this. He would do this. He would, like, he was part of that process of helping them synthesize it, and at the same time teaching them the beauty of what he loved in his jiu-jitsu. And so, that to me is just like, that's the tradition that we're a part of, and that's the process that I'm so passionate in carrying forward and never losing that. And it truly is. It's not easy to be at the vanguard or at the front of revolutionary things that are happening. And again, I'm not taking any of the credit. There's way greater men, giants, that I stand on the shoulders of, that have shared this, taught this, and continue to do this. And I just continue to make sure that I'm a conduit in that system and that flow. And so that's one thing I would say. And then my final thing is that, when it comes to solving the problem of violence, you do not need the whole. And for a lot of people, time is one of the big barriers. And they just go, I don't have the time to commit to training 3-4 times a week for the next 5, 10, 15 years to get good at these things and stuff. The synthesis, especially for violence, is very, very expedient. And that's one of the greatest things. Do you want to learn jiu-jitsu? And if your answer is my goal is to learn how to protect myself and my family, then you don't really want to learn jiu-jitsu. You just want to learn the aspects of jiu-jitsu that'll save your ass in a violent assault. You don't really want to learn boxing and kickboxing and Thai boxing and clinch game and Olympic wrestling. You just want to learn the strategies, tactics, and tools that allow you to protect your fucking family and fuck somebody up that thinks you're a victim, and take that person out of commission in the most brutally efficient manner possible, and get yourself safe, your family safe, and just get the fuck out of there and survive it. That's what you want. So, the eclectic approach, or the, getting ingrained in the dogma of one or two systems or something is not the best way. Look for the synthesis. Understand the synthesis, right? Let's not die in our geese, so to speak. So, okay, I think we'll end it there for tonight. Geez, Dustin, thanks, man. That was awesome. I appreciate it. The comments are good. I'm so sorry about the technical difficulty. We'll get. I don't know what happened on that tonight, but sometimes technology is what it is. So we'll have Dustin back with us next week. Brad, thanks. I'm glad that yours stayed clear, so we could have at least a conversation versus a lecture. That's always good. And I just appreciate it. So, for everyone listening, I didn't address it at the beginning because whatever, but I'm not wearing sunglasses because I'm a fucking douchebag and think I'm cool. I'm wearing it because they're the only glasses that I have right now. Ran out of contacts and my other glasses got fucked up. And so this is what I have, so I can see somewhat reason without getting a fucking headache and do this. So that's why it looks like I'm wearing sunglasses, which they are, but I'm not trying to be a douchebag. I just like to see, otherwise it gives me a headache. So, all right, that's it, everybody. Again, thanks for everyone for listening. We appreciate you. Please like, share, comment, follow. That's how we grow this. 5-star rating on wherever you get and download your podcast would be amazing. Don't forget to hit subscribe, like, follow, YouTube, Facebook, all of it. That's how we're growing this thing. Stay safe, stay weaponized, and we'll chat again soon, everybody. Take care.